Hello, creative and crafty people. I hope y'all are doing well today. In this video, I'm going to show you how I created this spiral and crystal beaded bracelet. I'll be using 6mm Swarovski crystal round beads, but keep in mind that you can choose any type of beads you'd like to make your piece unique. And you can also use any wire, such as silver, gold, or even platinum. There are many different types of wire out there. I use copper for its cost effectiveness and its ease of use, especially if I'm just practicing. But in this video, I'll be using silver plated copper wire. Have fun and make it your creation. If you'd like to learn how I created this bracelet, then stick around and let's get creating. For this project, we're going to need 8 pieces of 20 gauge wire cut at 10 centimeters in length. We're going to need 1 piece of 18 gauge wire cut at 6 centimeters in length, 1 piece of 18 gauge wire cut at 4 centimeters in length. You're going to need 8 6mm turquoise crystal round beads, or whatever type of beads you want to use. We're going to need a pair of chain nose pliers, a pair of round nose pliers, a pair of looping pliers, a pair of flush cutters. You'll need a file, a chasing hammer, and a bench block. I also end up using a pair of bent chain nose pliers that I forgot to add to this list of materials. This concludes the materials you will need for this project. If you missed something, you can either go back and rewatch this part of the tutorial, or you can check out the materials list in the description down below this video. Now let's get this show on the road and start creating. So to get started, we're going to need to grab our 20 gauge wire that was cut at 10 centimeters in length and a pair of round nose pliers. We're going to grab the end of this wire with our round nose pliers at the very tip of the wire and the very tip of our round nose pliers. And then we're going to start wrapping that wire around the barrel of the tip of those round nose pliers until the tail end of that wire meets back up with itself. Like so. And now we're going to start making our spiral around that loop. And we're going to just start gently bending it around that loop that we created. Now the goal here is to make this nice and even as possible. So I'm going to start by trying to get that space to be about the width of the tip of my round nose pliers. So here you can see it's about the size of those round nose pliers tip there. And now we're going to grab back in that loop so we can hold onto it, and we're going to continue spiraling around that loop. Like so. And this takes a little bit of time and patience just to make sure you're going to get it nice and even. See the tip of that round nose pliers, how I'm going to pull that wire right up against it just to make it so that it's that width of wire. So it's basically the width of a wire. And we're going to continue to spiral around just like so. And you just kind of have to keep finding places to grab as you're going around. Obviously, you don't want your round nose pliers to get in your way, but at the same time, you need to hold on to things here. You can also use your chain nose pliers. I just chose to use my round nose pliers for this, because that way I could keep the size, the tip of my round nose pliers. And now I'm going to keep wrapping the tail end of this wire around until it gets to the top of that teardrop almost shape that we did at the beginning with our loop. It kind of forms almost like a little teardrop shape in there. So we want to bring the end of that wire right to the top of that loop, and I'm going to show you that here in a second. Once I get my adjustments made here of how I'd like it to sit. And there we go. And now, this is what I was talking about. This is the little teardrop shape and this is the top. We're going to make a bend in this tail end of this wire straight up from the top of that little teardrop shape. So here I'm grabbing my chain nose pliers and I'm going to grab just to the left of where I want to make my bend. Like so. And then I'm going to bend this straight up at a 90-degree angle. Like so. Making sure we get that nice and straight. And there you can see we've got that all nice and ready to go. We're just going to do a couple little more adjustments. There we go. And now we're perfect. Now I'm going to grab my bench block and my chasing hammer, and we're just going to flatten this spiral out. This just hardens the spiral, number one. Number two, it just gives it a little interest where it catches the light off that flat surface. See how that does that? I just think it adds a bit of a shimmer to the piece. So here I'm making some more adjustments. After you hammer things, sometimes things spread out a bit. Now, after I clean up my spot a little bit here, I'm going to show you how I put the bead on. Pretty simple. So we just take our 6mm bead and then just pop that on the tail end of this wire, like so. And then now we're going to make our loop to create a link with. So grabbing a hold of the bead, we're going to take this top wire and bend it forward toward us at about a 45-degree angle. So there you can see that. And now we're going to grab our looping pliers. So with that 2mm barrel, we're going to grasp the wire as closely as possible to that bead and begin wrapping. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to turn those looping pliers in a little bit. I want the barrel of those looping pliers to be right over the top of the hole, if at all possible. And then bring the tail end of that wire back all the way around the barrel until it forms a small loop like this. And then right where this wire crosses over the other wire, we're going to flush cut that. So I've got my flush cutters here, and I am going to snip that wire flush right where those two wires intersect. Like so. And then we're going to take our, well, let me show you this first. This is just how much is left over of that wire. So if your spiral is a little bit wider than mine, you should have enough wire. So grabbing the chain nose pliers, I'm going to twist this wire into place, like so. And then we're going to make sure it's straight, perpendicular to our piece. And there is our first link. So now we're going to get the bench block back out and the chasing hammer, and we're going to hammer that little loop a little bit just to kind of firm it up. And with the magic of video editing, I have done all 8 of my pieces, all 8 of the links. So now we need to move on to our next step. So first we're going to grab one of these links and our chain nose pliers, and we are going to open this loop. To open the loop, we just twist it out to the side like I just did. Never pull it out away from itself. You will misshape that loop. We grab our next link and make sure it's facing the exact same direction as your first link when you put this on. Otherwise, they're going to be facing the opposite directions. And there you can see, we've got them going both the same direction. I'm going to flip this over, and with my chain nose pliers, I'm going to twist that loop back into shape. Not only does it keep its shape, but it does help to harden that loop a little bit more. And there we've got our first 2 links together. I'm going to show you one more. So here we're going to grab our loop on one side with the chain nose pliers, give it a little twist out to the side, grab another link, making sure it's facing the right direction, and pop that on there. Grab our chain nose pliers and twist it back into shape. And now we're just going to finish this piece the same way, all the way until we use all of our links up. And here is the beginning of our bracelet. I just love how this is turning out so far. And again, through the magic of video editing, I have went ahead and put the entire thing together, all the links together. And now we're going to get ready to start on the next part. So now we're going to grab our 18 gauge wire that was cut at 6 centimeters in length and our looping pliers. We're going to grab the tail end of this wire with our looping pliers, and then we're going to wrap that wire around the 2 millimeter barrel of the looping pliers. Now, instead of making that end meet up with itself, we're actually going to go above the tail of that wire and continue wrapping past the end of the wire. And we're going to keep going around, and we're going to pass the tail end of the wire once again, just a bit, like so. And this is how we're making our jump rings. So now with my flush cutters, I'm going to flush cut the wire that is going to form our jump ring. So we're going to cut one of these rings off like so. So we want both ends of that wire to be flush cut that face each other, like so. And now notice on this next one, there is a little funny point at the end of this wire. So we're going to cut that off. We're going to flush cut the end of this. So with my flush cut side facing the jump ring, I'm going to snip off the little end of this. So now we have a nice flush cut, and then I'm going to flip my flush cutters around and flush cut the other side of that jump ring, like so. And here you can see we've got our perfect little jump ring with 2 flush cut ends. And now with this piece that we just cut off, we're going to flush cut the ends. See there, we get that funny little point. So we're going to flush cut that off. Grab our looping pliers again. And this time we're going to grab at the 4 millimeter barrel, between the 4 and 5 millimeter barrel, but we're going to wrap around that 4 millimeter barrel. So here I'm going to start to wrap around, and I'm going to readjust that wire like so. And I'm going to wrap past the tail end up against that barrel, just slightly past, like so. And we're going to take that off. And now I'm going to flush cut the tail end of the wire so that we have a nice jump ring. So here we're going to flush cut right there. And there you can see that's how much wire we had left. And there's that jump ring, 4 millimeter jump ring. Now we're grabbing our 4.5 centimeter piece of wire, and we're grabbing the looping pliers at the 2 millimeter barrel. We're going to wrap this wire around until the wire actually meets up with itself this time. And then take that off of the looping pliers. And then grabbing between the 4 and 5 millimeter barrels, we're going to put that loop up against the 4 millimeter barrel and wrap around the 5mm barrel. So here you can see it's up against there. Nice and firm. And then we're going to take the tail end and wrap around the 5mm barrel. And we're going to wrap it all the way around until that wire intersects and lines up with the bottom part of that loop or the top part of the loop, depending on which way you're looking at it, the smaller loop that is. And it makes a little figure 8, and that's what you want. So now we're going to grab our flush cutters, and with the flush cut side, we're going to flush cut the wire right where it intersects with the wire underneath, like so. And then with our chain nose pliers, I'm going to grab the tip of that wire about 2mm in, and we're just going to give it a little bend to kind of mimic where the loop is there, so it's kind of parallel with that loop. And then with my flush cutters, I'm going to just nip off the end of this. I don't want it to be too long. So I'm just going to nip off that little end, and sometimes there's a little dent in that wire from the chain nose pliers anyhow, so that just takes that right off of there. And then I'm going to grab my file, and I'm just going to file away at the end of this wire just to get rid of the jagged edge. We want it nice and smooth so it doesn't catch on sweaters or clothing or anything else it shouldn't catch on and damage. We don't want it to scratch anyone. And there we are. Nice and smooth and a little bit rounded off on the end there. Now grabbing my bench block and the chasing hammer, I'm going to harden this little hook that we've made, or clasp, whichever you want to call it. We just gave it a couple little whacks. And there you can see it has a little shimmer to it, as well as now it's hardened. And now we're going to put our bracelet together. So we need to grab the chain nose pliers and the bent chain nose pliers we forgot at the beginning of the video. And I'm going to grab that 2mm jump ring and grab on the right side with my bent chain nose pliers. And with the regular chain nose pliers on the left, we're going to twist this jump ring. Again, make sure you twist it to the side, don't pull them apart. And then we're going to loop the end of that spiral link that we have. And then we're going to twist this jump ring back into place by going past just a little and then coming back until we get those to line up just perfectly. And twisting it like that will help work harden those jump rings as well. And there you can see it's nice and together. And now we're going to grab our 5mm jump ring. Nope, that's a 4mm jump ring. I'll get it right one of these days. And now we've twisted that open, and we're going to catch our 2mm jump ring with that 4mm jump ring. And then we're going to twist this back closed, just like we did with our 2mm jump ring. Going past and then coming back until we get it to meet up nice and neat, and you can't hardly see where that is even together. Now we're going to grab our other 2mm jump ring. Again, twist it apart. Grab the little loop at the other end of our bracelet. There we go. And then we're going to twist this closed after we've put our clasp on there. So don't forget to add that clasp. Now we're going to twist this past and then back up together. Nice and neat. Lining those up just perfectly. Like so. A little blurry there, sorry about that. And there it is. And now we've completed our bracelet. there's our two ends with the clasp and the hook, or the clasp and the jump ring. And here I'm going to show you how easy this is to get this on. So it just clasps on just like that. And there you have a finished bracelet. Isn't that gorgeous? I'm also going to show you this. You could even take this clasp if you didn't want to do the jump rings, and you could just clasp it through the spirals, just like that. So if you'd rather do that, you could do that. I just like the look of having the jump rings. It just gives it a little bit of an easier place to clasp. And there is the finished bracelet. What did you guys think? I just love the way it turned out. I sure hope y'all enjoyed watching this video. Let me know in the comments below what you thought. Would you do something different? Maybe add to this design? Would you use different wire or beads? Did you like the project? I'd really like to hear your feedback. Also, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. This just lets YouTube know that you enjoyed my content, and in turn, YouTube will push these videos out to even more creative people like yourself. If you haven't already and you'd like to see more of my tutorials, then click that subscribe button. It's free, and by subscribing to my channel, you can be notified when a new tutorial is up for you to view. Thank you guys for your continued support. I sure do appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next Thursday.